Hello, Eugenie here. Today we speak with homeopath and educator Caroline Gaskin, all the way from the UK. So Caroline has worked as a homeopath, flower essence prescriber and health coach for over 20 years in her London-based practice, and she's recently added online consultations for her clients worldwide. She is an expert in hormonal health and draws on many years' experience of working in PR, for complementary health, holistic parenting, organic lifestyle, permaculture, and sustainable systems, as well as natural health. I have done a couple of her online courses on hormonal health, and she's really a brilliant educator, and her courses are so helpful. So it was really lovely to get her on today, and I'm sure you'll really enjoy this podcast and just get to see all the various aspects of how homeopathy can help with our hormonal health. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now, your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangouts. Today, we are hanging out with homeopath and educator Caroline Gaskin, all the way from the UK. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you. So great to be here.
I'm a huge fangirl and I've done a few of your various lectures. I love listening to you. You're such a great educator and it's just somebody that I love learning from. So it's very special to get to have you on today. But can you tell us a bit about how you got into homeopathy in the first place?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I love these international connections, like the way that we can just talk to each other from my lounge to yours.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I started out as a homeopath 21 years ago, but really got into homeopathy, obviously, before that. I say obviously because sometimes people turn up at college and they really don't have a lot of experience of homeopathy, but they are kind of intrigued by it in some way. And so obviously I'm really encouraging them to see a homeopath. But for me, the journey started a long time back, and a friend suggested I go to see a homeopath. And she just talked about it as an interesting experience. And I went and I was given a remedy and I got a skin rash and I didn't understand the process at all. So it was a kind of funny experience, and it took me a long time to sort out the rash for various reasons. And I suppose I really got into homeopathy when I had my son. So I was given a remedy during labour, and it actually came in a little bit too late in the day. I did give birth to him naturally, but sometime afterwards he got a cough, and I took him to see a homeopath because I think he'd had 2 coughs and he was 4 months old and he was just being breastfed, and we were looking into the whole conversation about vaccination, and we hadn't yet vaccinated him. And so we were looking at that. He was just breastfed. And I was like, how come my baby's got, a cough again? And so I said, I must have talked to somebody who took me, and said to go to this natural health clinic and see the homeopath there. And actually the trigger for that was that I'd gone to the doctor, and the doctor wanted to give me medication with a sedative in it. So it was like a kind of nighttime cough medication, but it had a sedative in. And I was like, you're not drugging my baby. So I was looking for an alternative for the cough. And then when I got to the homeopath, she asked me all the classic questions of, how he was with the cough and who he was as a baby. And that fascinated me. And part of what I shared was how he was quite a chilly baby. And, I've often said this, he didn't like his baby grow kind of taken off when we went to baby massage classes, and all the other girls in the class, the baby girls, just sort of loved being massaged and, were kind of noisy and happy. And he was like, oh, don't take my baby grow off, it's cold. And he was given carb, and of course it cured his cough. And I think he had that again. And then much, much later, when he was 15 months old, he had whooping cough. And after that, he was given tuberculinum, and he never ever had a cough again, which was incredible. And the next time I heard him cough, he was about 26 years old, so homeopathy became part of our family. The first port of call, it was safe, it was effective, it worked, and it felt really good. And then I think when I was about 6 months post his birth, I started to experience what I now think of as like an identity crisis, and now many times we call it postnatal depression, but actually, we're very, very much as women in the Western world taught to be autonomous. We're often not next to our families. We may not have a relationship that is well supported in terms of, mums, sisters, etc. We were far away from those people that would naturally support us, and that was certainly the situation for me. So I didn't really know how to recognize what I was going through, and that was, and I think it's really good to share these things. So 4.5 months into the post-birth period, I was young when I had my son. 4.5 months in, I'd gone back to my pre-pregnancy weight. And actually, I was lighter than my pre-pregnancy weight. Now, anybody that's working with women will know that that's a bit of a danger signal. It means that you're possibly moving into mineral and nutritional depletion, and that you really need some support because you want to go on feeding baby, and you're going to do that at your own cost because that's how we're made. So it was a time when I started to feel a bit ungrounded. I started to question who I was, where I'd come from, my identity. And I kind of voiced a bit of that to the homeopath, and she said, I think you need to come and see me. And I went to see her, and she gave me sepia 1M. And I always say of that it just got to the bottom of the barrel of who and what Caroline Gaskin was. And it just was like, it was just like that somersault, a 180. It was like, I looked at my life and I worked on a lot of stuff. And here I am today.
I love that you said that. I literally had a client in today that said exactly that. Her baby is, I think, about 18 months. And she's like, I don't know who I am. Like, it's something that we hear so often in the clinic, and that homeopathy can get in there and, help you on that energetic level to, balance things out. Is so amazing. You used an interesting term. You said it's an interesting experience going to see a homeopath. Or your friend said that to you. Why would you describe a homeopathic consultation as an interesting process?
Yeah, great question. I mean, what happens when you come to see a homeopath is you spend an hour in the company of somebody whose sole interest is not funded by anything else other than to help you on your healing journey, to reignite your vital force. To the body knows itself. The body knows how intrinsically what is needed to cure it. And we just don't know how to listen to that anymore. So when you go to a homeopath, they are just listening to you, and they are asking about your whole life story and how you got to where you are now. So, that homeopath said to me, without going too much into my story, she said to me, have you ever felt like this before? And I said, yes, I felt like this when I was 8. And she said, tell me about when you were 8. And I told her about when I was 8. And she said, you know that those feelings aren't normal, don't you? And I didn't know that. And I hadn't known that, for 20 years. I was 28 at the time. And so it really uncovered something for me. It really helped me look at a very deep change that had taken place in my life at that point in my life when I was nearly 8. And to begin to do some personal work on that, to begin to do the personal journey. And you can only do that in an hour, listening. And then obviously you need a lot of time, a lot more than an hour, but you need to hear what we call the timeline, the person's story, how they got from 0 to whatever age they are now. And if I have somebody in front of me who's 6 months old, I'm going to spend an hour with them finding about the pregnancy, the conception, that pre-birth journey into the world, and how the world is for that tiny being now. So in that, usually classically it's an hour, but we spend time listening to every aspect, every nuance of a person's disease, health, well-being, wherever they're at. And, as homeopaths, we're listening for things that the allopaths don't necessarily listen to or for. And I think the biggest thing for me, and it depends on whether you're a homeopath in the audience or not, so me and Eugenia will try and explain this, but, we're listening for the mental emotional symptoms. So that sort of, how is it for you emotionally? And how was it for you emotionally? And when did it change? And we're also listening to you, how is it for you physically? And many people will be able to identify with and talk about their physical symptoms in some way. and they may come from a very allopathic place and talk about it as an itis, an itch. And then we're asking them to qualify that. So as homeopaths, we're asking to qualify the pain, the discomfort, the experience, and we're listening for what we call general symptoms. So we're listening for when it started, whether it comes at a certain time of year, which part of the body it occurs on, what it's better for, what it's worse for. So if you've got an itch, is it better for plunging it into hot water? And then that gets us close to the remedy, because we're looking to differentiate between many thousands of remedies that we have in our pharmacy.
I'm so glad that you've said that, because the reality is that very few people know what to expect when they go to see a homeopath. Usually it's word of mouth. So, their friend has had brilliant results. Their friend has told them to come, but they have no idea what homeopathy is or what to expect. So I love that you've just quantified that for us. Caroline, why did you decide to become a homeopath and then also an educator, a brilliant one at that?
Thank you. It's a very interesting journey. I always say that homeopathy came to get me. So even though it had been, our number one healthcare choice for a long time, I had an interest from a very young age in herbs, what kind of first came to me in terms of a healing paradigm. Prior to that, I was always very interested in health articles, and I would pick up what we had in the UK. I don't know if it's worldwide. It might be. It was called Reader's Digest. So we didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
We may or may not have had books at home. And we used to get this thing called the Reader's Digest. And the pages that most fascinated me were the personal stories, were the health journeys. So I remember some of those really vividly. I remember a story about sugar and how bad sugar is for us. And I was really shocked because I was interested. Because I wasn't shocked. I was interested, because I actually really liked sugar, and I didn't realize, a total 70s product. I was just addicted to sugar and chemicals. And, and so here I am, trying to help people with that addiction. And that leads on to other stuff as well, the sugar chemicals story, was really born very much or came to fruition very much in the 70s. And so this conversation about sugar really piqued my interest, how white sugar was quite evil, and that, it came from the slave trade, and it's been purified and sanitized. And, from the 1930s onwards, it's a massive part of everything that we kind of eat, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down and all that stuff, all that kind of, and also the whole conversation about, at least in the UK, fats were demonized and sugar was idealized and became, what we sweetened discomfort with. And, so we warped our integrity, our microbiome. We started to destroy the very things that make us human, which is, the millions of bacteria inside us, which form the microbiome, which responds all the time to the outside world, draws up nutrients, allows us to engage, to become allegedly high-functioning mammals. So that one article, was really, really interesting to me. And it was sort of herbalism, food interest, health very It's all there in my astrology. Interestingly, Virgo rising, which is very associated with our health,
The Reader's Digest also had really good jokes. I don't know if you remember that. I remember reading the jokes in the Reader's Digest. They were really good.
The jokes, interesting. Yeah. So homeopathy came to get me. I was talking with the owner of the natural health centre that we went to, and I was sort of saying, and he asked me, he must have said to me, or maybe I asked him, I can't remember, but we were talking about maybe studying. And he said, my sister's, Stella Berg, is just starting a foundation in homeopathy. You should talk to her. So I did. And kind of the rest is history,
And how did you then go on to teach at CHE? And can you tell us a little bit about CHE?
Yes. So I trained to be a homeopath with Stella, 6 months foundation course. And she said, at the end of the course, she highlighted some courses for us, some directions that we could go in. And some people were going to be home prescribers. Some people were going to become homeopaths. And she said to me, you should go and study with Robert Davidson. He's a maverick. You're the right sort of person for CPH, the College of Practical Homeopathy. Mm-hmm. So I went to study with Robert, and Robert was an incredible person. He's taught, many of the leading homeopaths in the UK. And he studied under Thomas Morn. And Thomas Morn and John de Monte in the 1960s, 70s really changed the face of homeopathy and brought it out of, the dark ages, a very dry place, into modern day homeopathy. So a lot of amazing protocols, an incredible approach to being a practitioner. And one of my colleagues, Sarah Campbell, she said when we graduated, Robert, you've taught us to be able to prescribe anywhere. If the city's burning down and we're only sitting on the steps of Notre Dame with our repertories, we'd be able to prescribe, and that is so true, and that served me well through many world traumas, so I graduated in 2000. In 2001, we had, of course, the World Trade Center. In the UK after that, we had the tsunami, 2006. We had the London bus bombings, 2007. And from then on, we've had world trauma presented to us, right to our sort of doorstep, right into our home in a very different way to how it used to be. And each one of those, we've met those with trauma clinics, homeopathic response, knee-jerk reaction to go out and help the people involved. And I think the most recent in terms of that type of disaster for us was Grenfell, which is right into the heart of our city in London, when the tower block caught fire. And, we just went over and set up clinics, with our remedies. We asked people to post in remedies to support us with, people drove in from all over the place, to create several clinics to meet the needs of people in the immediate environment, not just in the tower.
Wow.
But, homeopaths have this incredible drive to help others in a way that I don't see in other complementary therapies. So it's been, an incredible journey so far. And of course, COVID, the most recent is how are we going to respond to a very different kind of crisis amongst us. And, I'm really conscious that was preceded by the fires in Australia, that this huge burning of the wood element happened, went through us. The forest fire went through the world. And then after that, it's like the worm that comes out of the wood, COVID emerged. I think it's a story that's really yet to be told, at a kind of, at a spiritual level, at a potential healing level. We're in the midst of something which is really quite dynamic, and we are only just beginning to, I think it's has the capacity to get out of control, really out of control. I don't think it's out of control yet. I think the next few months, we're recording in October 2021. I think there's going to be a big unfolding. I think we're going to need to become stronger as a community. So the thing that I think the thread that's come through all of this, is becoming educators as homeopaths, supporting those in our immediate community. That's our practice, supporting each other, growing the group space, so through COVID, it's been a tremendous space to grow, like homeopathic first aid courses, to grow, looking after yourself, understanding our hormones. That's a big part of my work, working with hormonal imbalance and particularly menopause. But, just that kind of journey that we're on, as homeopaths is I often say we're nothing if not also educators. Every time someone comes in to see us one-to-one, they are going to need some support and education. So it really starts at that space.
That's beautiful, because Samuel Hahnemann, who was the founder of homeopathy, he definitely had that as well, because he was always educating people about, health and hygiene. And that was, the early 1800s, before any of that was mainstream. He was already educating his clients about, all of these different things. So you're right. It's definitely an educating role as well.
Yeah.
Can we please next go into your specialty, hormones, menopause, and how you got into that and why you love it, and what sort of cases you see in your clinic? Because that's something I can talk about all day long as well, because our hormones, I only see women and children in my clinic. So it's all about the hormones.
Yes. It's crazy to isolate hormones and say, in a way, I work with hormonal balance, because that immediately has people thinking, and acknowledging and only focusing on hormones as a kind of female, particularly a female. I'd say if we say I'm working in hormonal balance, I'd say 85% of that conversation is received as you sort out women's hormones. But actually,
agreed.
Hormones are chemical messengers in the body that are constantly interplaying and interchanging and exchanging information and triggering something else to happen. So, we eat a rich meal and a whole load of hormones come into action that are nothing to do with our female hormonal system.
That's true.
When we say we work in hormonal balance, generally, we're talking about balancing female hormones and maybe male hormones. And, there's a huge need for that. We're in crisis. We're seeing symptoms that are off the scale, and we're particularly seeing that at menopause. And menopause is, I think, my personal journey, with homeopathy is motherhood through menopause to the self and beyond, So there's something about starting out, with my children, with myself, that journey, and then moving through menopause. I'm very much post-menopause now, but it was doing a talk at International Women's Day a couple of years ago. I think it was just before COVID, actually, 2019. That even though I was doing managing menopause naturally workshops at that time, that particular talk really brought it home to me that women need support, that women's health is vastly underexplored, undersupported, that women go to their doctor and do not get solutions. They certainly don't get any natural health options. And the reason it was that particular talk is it's only a 20-minute talk on managing menopause naturally. And all the women that came up from many, many different backgrounds, many cultural backgrounds, it was a talk it's called Homes for Haringey. And it's basically Haringey Council. So it's a local district in London. The local council, home support, so public housing issues, mainly women working there, which was amazing, really, to see that women are the ones that are providing information about the home, support in the home. I just thought, that really struck me. And women from Haringey is a very mixed borough culturally. It's a bit like Southwest Sydney. So the audience was diverse. And I just had all these women come up afterwards and say, I had no idea there was any alternative to HRT. I instinctively don't want to take HRT, but I've been struggling. I had no idea. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's work for me to do at that kind of group, one-to-many level, that it's all very well working one-to-one with women who hear about what I do and come into that space. But actually, there's far more work to do at the one-to-one level to introduce some very simple measures, that we can take to balance our hormones. So that's been something of a mission, and I've done lots of talks and workshops, and I'd like eventually, and it's coming, to work more at that business to business level, so that we're educating within the corporate world about how to support women with transition, change, whether that is pregnancy, whether that is illness, particularly cancers, where you've got a big journey, but autoimmune disease, where you've got a big journey where you do need to be supported by the workplace. And of course, menopause, so that part of my work is big. And I have a Facebook group, which is a sort of freebie space. I have a YouTube channel, which has got some freebie stuff on it. And then we can dive into sort of a 2-hour workshop for probably, I'm going to say, a fifth of the cost of a one-to-one consultation. And, so there's lots of opportunity now that we're working online. To spread the word and really support, I think, women in a and clients obviously, but women in that wider space.
It's always really sad when clients say they didn't know they had another option, and like with the HRT, it's I think if people actually knew what it was derived from and how it's made, they would probably be pretty shocked. And just not knowing that there's an alternative is really sad. A lot of clients, for example, children with eczema, I deal a lot with that, and they will say, well, I just didn't know there was an alternative to steroids. People just don't know that, homeopathy has so many safe options to offer. So that's great that you made them aware of that. And, often they can just hear this at just the right time. And that's why I'm so passionate about getting this podcast out there, because I can just imagine that, a mum driving, hearing this and then thinking, oh, there's another way. That's so wonderful. I'm saying driving because that's when most people, I think, listen to podcasts. That's certainly when I do.
Absolutely.
Doing the washing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you maybe share a few cases with us from your clinic, Caroline?
Yeah. When you first said that, about what do you see, in your clinic? What came into my mind was a friend of my daughter's. My daughter's 29 now, but when she was a little bit younger, a friend of hers from college came to stay for a few days. I think she had work experience in London, and she said, "So I know that you're a homeopath, and I sort of know a little bit about what that." But she said, "Well, what do you actually do? What do you actually work with?" And I said, "What a great question!" And I wrote down everybody that I prescribed for in the week and their sex, their age, and what I prescribed for. And it was such a huge diversity, and it was sharing that with her was really interesting, because it was a lesson to myself about how adept we are as homeopaths, in general practice, and that we might specialize, but we always get in this incredible variety of ages, stages of disease and demographics, So some of my most interesting cases, I guess, are when somebody comes in and they are ready in a way for homeopathy. Perhaps other groups of people aren't. And it's been some of my biggest teachings in terms of what we call the homeopathic conversation and managing cases. And I'm thinking of, because I work in central London, very near Harley Street, I work at Ainsworths Pharmacy. And that's right in the heart of central London, just north of Oxford Street, which is our busy shopping street, just like it is in Sydney. And just north of there is Ainsworths, and just near there is Harley Street. And Harley Street is internationally famous on a medical level. And so we will get people falling out of Harley Street into Ainsworths asking for support. And some of my biggest teachers, in a way, have been my Muslim clients, my Middle Eastern clients, who have a deep spiritual practice. And we don't have that in the UK in general. Us white, Caucasian types, and they're definitely the same in Australia as well, don't have a massive spiritual, religious background practice in the main. We're a long way from that. So when someone comes in and they have that and they are attending to themselves spiritually, they are much more ready for this energy medicine to slide in. And that was really interesting. Often somebody who has been doing some psychotherapy is also ready for something else to slide in because they're attending to their mental emotional needs. If somebody comes in and they've had a lot of good quality nutrition and maybe supplementation, then that part of them is being looked after and they are more ready for homeopathy. So the people who really aren't doing anything in their lives are the ones that we might perhaps be more careful with in terms of our prescribing. So we might start with a lower potency, or we might start with a potency like LMs that can gently slide into the system and begin to wake up to, as I said, the homeopathic conversation. So I think that can be a useful indicator for us. And it was something that I wasn't really taught, to make an assessment about where someone was at mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and how ready they were for homeopathy. So that's actually a gem.
Yeah, definitely.
And a recent gem, talking of gems, that I came across is the journey from a mineral remedy where one is perhaps more engaged with, so the remedy, and by a mineral remedy I mean something like silica or calcarb, perhaps arsenicum, which is made from a mineral substance, and someone comes in and it is their world exists for them as a safe space if they have order and structure in the world. And then if they're a plant remedy, or they move into the plant remedy state, and I'm thinking of a client in particular who moved from those types of remedies into lycopodium, did very well on lycopodium, and actually a bit of aurum when some grief came up. And then one day I looked at her and I realised that she'd lost her sparkle. And I gave her remedy golden topaz. And that really ignited something. I felt like she then moved into kind of back into herself. So that journey through the types of remedies is fascinating. I didn't include animal remedies there, but she has had a couple of animal remedies along the way.
I love it. Have you perhaps got some like specific cases that you can tell us that you've really enjoyed that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a client that I've supported through for many, many years. And for many years, she's a big traveller, and she would get colds after every time she travelled. Because she travelled a lot, she was always it just felt like I was always prescribing for the cold. So I was only ever prescribing at an acute level. And one day I put an immune system support remedy into her jet lag combination. So I got her travelling with a remedy, which is a combination remedy that I give to people for jet lag, having travelled to and from Australia a lot, actually, myself. In fact, to and from Perth a lot myself. Yeah. I was well versed in using a jet lag combination. So I put that together, and then I added in an immune system support, and she started to travel without getting colds. So I could get to her constitution, and I gave her sulfur, and that really shifted something for the case. I got into a much more interesting part of the case. So if you are prescribing only ever at the acute level, it's okay, but you have this sense that you are only ever putting out fires. And in Chinese medicine system, I am a water tiger. So I have the capacity to put out a lot of fires because I've got water element.
That's very interesting. Do you use Chinese medicine, or I
love the system. Do you use it?
No, I wish that was if I was going to study anything else ever, which I don't think I'll ever have time because homeopathy is so all consuming and I'm just forever, learning new things about homeopathy. But if I was ever to study another modality, I think it would be TCM. I think it's got the ability to, I just find it really fascinating, the tiny little bit that I know about it. And I think it ties in well with homeopathy from what I've heard.
Yeah, it really does. I use the analogy, I was taught a little bit about it by Hilary Dorian, I think, when I was at college.
Yeah.
And I've I have a little app in my phone which is called Organ Clock, and that gives you the times of day that organs are showing their colours, if you like. So the Chinese is a very interesting system, and I just made a little note to send you a link to TCM.
Yes, please.
It's a really useful site that I found that has just got some great basic information as a kind of taster, as a bit of understanding. So without going into explaining what I know of it. What I do find useful is things like each organ has this 2-hour window when it is awake, or perhaps definitely meant to be asleep and resting and restoring. And I find that very useful. So if someone is waking at a certain time of night, if someone is ill at a certain time of day, then I've started to group certain homeopathic remedies into that. So we know that Nat Muir feels better in the morning. Sort of they're kind of, they feel quite good in themselves until mid-morning. And that ties in with the 9 to 11 slot in Chinese medicine. And so, you can then go and look that up. One of my favorites is the gallbladder time of day is 11 in the evening till 1 in the morning. And that is the time when really we should be resting. We have an English saying, which is an hour before midnight is worth 2 afterwards. Or if someone's trying to make a decision, we say just sleep on it. And actually the gallbladder in Chinese medicine is the master of decision making. So if we rest during that time and we sleep during that time, then we are able to make decisions more easily. It's just little gems like that, I think, that really help the client get why it's a great idea to be in bed, falling asleep between 10 and 11 and not pushing it to 1 a.m. And then worrying why they're so indecisive and can't make their minds up about life.
Absolutely. Now, when did you start teaching, and what do you enjoy about teaching?
I started teaching at CPH, actually. So CHE was started in, I think, 1997 by Marcus and well, it was started by Gordon, and Marcus Fernandez and Ellen Kramer joined him to create CHE. And I was asked by both Marcus and Ellen. I was encouraged into being a teacher. And I felt it was too soon. I'd only just graduated. So me and a friend started tutorials in 2002. So two years into practice, started doing tutorials, which were great fun. And we had a group of people that came, and not just homeopaths, actually. We had some complementary therapists as well. So it was a very interesting space. And then I started to teach at CPH. We ran an independent clinic as well outside of CPH called the Angel Clinic that new graduates could come to. So there's some really great kind of like learning spaces along the way. And I love it. I channel, I realize now, people will say, oh, can you just say that again? I'll be like, not really, no. And I think what I love about teaching at the moment, since we're using the online space a lot, is it really fulfills the big creative side as well for me. So my background is fine art textiles. I was in the creative world before I got into training as a homeopath. I have a background in PR as well. And
some really good skills to bring into your clinic.
Yeah, definitely. And I share that. So my next step in terms of teaching is to start. I'm working on a course for developing your practice, for setting up your practice, for developing your practice, for a thriving practice, to share the skills that I've got and have learned along the way in terms of becoming who you're meant to be as a homeopath. So, I think that's really a big part of what I enjoy about it is you never know. We don't know ourselves, what we're going to get into in this journey as homeopaths. But it is amazing. There's some magic in being part of that. And this weekend, the students from 2021 at CHE graduated. So I started teaching at CHE more recently. I used to run their tutorials a long time ago. So that was sort of in the early 2000s. And then started teaching for them, I guess around 2014, I think it is. And I teach on both the full-time and the part-time courses, which is interesting because full-time is 2 years, part-time is 4. And so we get quite different groups of people on those courses often. And sometimes people will change from one course to another because their circumstances change. And we're, very much in this space, which is incredibly privileged, to support people through their journey, whatever it is, as they train, into becoming who they're meant to be as homeopaths. It's amazing.
And I'm wondering, Caroline, do you have a specific type of person that comes through and study to be a homeopath?
For me, so to personalize it's I think it's only ever been women who've come to see me in my practice who have moved into being healers, and they're not always homeopaths. Sometimes I also work with the flower essences, particularly your Australian bush flower essences. And so sometimes it's flower essences, and sometimes it's simply knowing that someone that comes in is a healer, and I say to them, especially the ones that ask a lot of questions, they come with a lot of anxiety actually, and they ask a lot of questions. And I say to them, you'd actually make a really good homeopath. You're asking the right questions.
It's funny. I was wondering whether that was a prerequisite because I do have a couple of my clients who have gone on to study homeopathy, and their main complaint when they came to see me was anxiety. So it's interesting because I think as homeopaths, you have to constantly question everything. And maybe when you're anxious, you've got that predisposition to be questioning everything. So, yeah, who knows?
Absolutely. I just wanted to echo that about questioning, because one of the things I've said through COVID, is I am a walking question box. I have been asking so many questions, not necessarily getting answers, but I was asking so many questions through all of this, what is really going on is the biggest one, but down to I want to know, and it doesn't always have the answers, and thankfully there are some movers and shakers and speakers out there. I was listening to Russell Brand this morning, and just just asking the right questions, which is fantastic.
How do you see homeopathy fitting into all this craziness that's been going on in the world in the last year? So how are homeopaths able to help? So say anyone's listening to this right now and they've been affected by COVID and what's happening in some way. How do you think homeopathy can help them?
I've got one word. I'd say beautifully.
Great.
Specifically, I would say what I encourage my clients to do, and I have from the get-go, is to get a decent homeopathic kit. In the UK, they do send them out internationally, and I don't know what you have in Australia. I'd love to hear actually from because I do have some Australian clients. We have Ainsworths that I work at. They have a 42 remedy kit, and then we have Helios who have a 36 remedy kit. We have another big pharmacy called Nelson's. I'm sure they have some kind of kit. I'm not familiar with it, and I should pop in and see those guys and see what they do. But when you've got a homeopathy kit, you only have 42 of the many thousands of remedies that we have in our pharmacy, but you have 42 very well chosen remedies. And I would honestly say that all the people that I've been coaching through COVID, and that's whether they're vaccinated or not, because obviously that's been going on since the beginning of 2021, but, last year and this year, I've simply been using their kit. And if they start to use remedies from their homeopathic kit from the get-go, then they can get through this very efficiently. And that's everything from, remedies that I wouldn't normally be thinking about in an acute, particularly, or I may, but I'm thinking of Natmure for the loss of sense of taste and smell. For Kali-Bic, the minute the mucus sets in, so the minute someone says, oh, I'm feeling a bit stuffy, a bit mucusy, like take that Kali-Bic, and that just shifts that. So what you want to do with COVID, if you are either listening and thinking, oh, could homeopathy help, or you're a student or you're a practitioner, is to get there with very simple remedies as soon as you can. So the minute, somebody says, oh my goodness, so-and-so's got a positive COVID test and I was with them yesterday, take Arsen Alb. Arsen Alb has been the biggest remedy for me through the whole thing. It matched the symptoms that we saw coming out of Wuhan originally. It's been, it genuinely has been a lifesaver. So Arsen Alb, and all sorts of reasons for that. If you're reading the papers, the scientific papers about the actual virus itself and its makeup, then you'll see Arsen Alb written all over it. So for me, it's the single most useful remedy. And there are many others. And then we move into the fever state, and it's been mainly gelsemium, if arsenicum's not meeting the needs, occasionally phosphorus. The dry cough that's been coming more recently, phosphorus. And one of the symptoms that I've seen, which is a remedy that is not in the kit, but particularly I've seen a couple of times very recently in young women who've had the vaccine. They've had a double vaccine, and then they've gone on to have COVID, and they've gone on to have COVID, which has lasted for about 10 days. Now, that's a long time. I've been getting people through this in 4 to 5 days, maybe 6 days. For sure, there are some people with underlying health conditions, and it's taking sort of 8 to 10 days to get through. But a few young women in my practice recently, or that have come to me, and they've been getting swollen glands. Now, I've not seen swollen glands throughout all of this, and I've used Buritacarb. That's really been helpful. So, we're listening to the symptoms that someone's presenting with and taking the case as usual and finding a remedy and, making that fit basically to what's going on.
Yeah, and isn't homeopathy amazing that, you were saying about Arsen Alb, which a lot of my clients will know as arsenicum, because I know they're going to be listening to this and going, what's that remedy she's saying? It was Arsen Alb, also arsenicum. But arsenicum's mental emotional picture, just with all that incredible anxiety that we're seeing in so many of our clients, because a lot of them don't know, there's so much uncertainty, they don't know what's going to happen. So I feel like the whole world is in an arsenicum state, and if we could just put these remedies prophylactically in the tap water, it would just calm everyone down.
It would, and the thing is interesting actually, because I'm in the middle of teaching a first aid course, and this Wednesday we're going to be doing the mental emotional remedies that are in the kit, the mental emotional sides of the remedies that are in the kit. And the biggest thing with arsenicum really is health anxiety. So it's personal. It's anxiety about the health. It's less about health of others, a bit more selfish, but it's so the state is it's become personalized, and behind it all is fear of death. So interesting, all of this.
So interesting.
Can I ask you though, because I'd love to know, do you have a supplier in Australia who supplies a kit? You.
So I will show you some picture afterwards of my kits. I've got them on my website. Yeah. And I personally think that I have the best kits in the world. And I'll tell you why. Because I use amber glass. So I'm always surprised that some homeopaths use the clear glass. So I have amber glass. I would never put my remedies in plastic. I have waterproof labels, and I have dots on the top, so it makes it so much easier to find them. And I have beautiful little travel cases. Sorry, I'm getting a little blurb in here for my own products. But yeah, I'll have to send you a complimentary one.
I'd love it. My favourite thing of all would be to fly over to Perth. I think that's a bit out of the question at the moment. But I love your city. It's just such a great place.
It is a beautiful city. Mm-hmm. So, Caroline, I like to finish off on a bit of fun, and I always ask my guests, what are your top 3 remedies for you personally? So if you could only choose 3 out of the 8,000 plus, which 3 could you not live without?
I've just a few that have fallen into my head. Okay, so I don't know if Moonstone came up. I don't know why that dropped in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody needed to hear that, obviously.
Carcinosum 200. Because as a practitioner, we give a lot, and we really have to watch that we don't spend too much of ourselves. And so every so often, a Carcinosum 200 might slip into the equation. Moonstone 1M and Rainbow 30C.
I have got 1,200 remedies in my clinic, but I don't have Moonstone 100%. Or Rainbow, so I'm going to have to order them now. I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to doing more of your courses. Keep producing them because I love watching them.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for your time. Bye.
Hi homies, I'd like to invite you to come and join me at the Homeopathy Hangout Podcast Facebook group, where we can discuss past episodes and you can help me decide on new content for the show. Also be sure to check out my YouTube channel, where you'll find my free Homeopathy at Home 30-minute introduction video, which is perfect for anyone completely new to homeopathy who's ready to take charge of their own health. Just search for Eugenie Kruger Homeopathy on YouTube. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can make a once-off $5 donation by visiting www.buymeacoffee.com/hangout. Or if you'd like to make a monthly donation, you can visit www.patreon.podbean.com/homeopathy hangout. And if you're in Australia and you'd like to purchase one of our beautiful homeopathic kits, single remedies, or one of our amazing combination remedies, visit www.eugeniekruger.com, where you can also sign up to our newsletter so you don't miss out on any special offers. And if you're interested in advertising on our show, please email info@eugeniekruger.com. Thanks so much for listening.